GST is a destination-based tax. Destination-based tax is nothing but the person who is going to purchase the product, he is liable to pay the GST to the government. The total amount charged by Mr. X is rupees 11,800 and Mr. Y is liable to pay the GST of rupees 1,800 rupees and 9,000 is the total GST payable and the total value of supply is how much? It is rupees 59,000. Hello everyone, I am Arun Kumar, lecturer in Department of Commerce and Management, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. Dear students, welcome to this new session number 3 on unit number 1, that is Introduction to GST. So dear students, so far we discussed some theoretical aspects with respect to GST. In that we discussed what is GST, what are the benefits of GST, features of GST, types of GST, and the rates comes under GST. And we also discussed about the GST Council and the members who are going to be in that GST Council and what are the functions the GST Council is supposed to perform and the duties of GST Council, about this all concepts, and also about the CGST Act 2017 and the important terminologies which comes under the CGST Act 2017. About these all aspects we discussed in the previous session. So dear students, in this particular session we are going to solve a few problems, few basic problems with respect to computation of GST payable on or at the time of selling the product to a particular customer. So if you look into the first problem, Mr. Rajesh, supplier of Tamil Nadu, supplied 10 units of refrigerator which cost 22,000 each to Mr. Manohar. So here we have two parties. One is Rajesh, he is the supplier, that means he is supplying the goods, he is selling the goods. And the one more party we have is Mr. Manohar, who is purchasing the product from Mr. Rajesh. For how much? For rupees 22,000 each. So here Mr. Rajesh is supplying 10 units of refrigerators which cost 22,000 each to Mr. Manohar, the wholesaler in Mysuru. So here Manohar is a wholesaler in Mysuru. So now Mr. Rajesh given 15% of discount on each refrigerator. The applicable GST is 18% and compute GST payable by Mr. Manohar. So here why Mr. Manohar is supposed to pay the GST? So as we all know, GST is a destination based tax. Destination based tax is nothing but the person who is going to purchase the product, he is liable to pay the GST to the government, right? So that is why Mr. Manohar is supposed to pay the tax to the government, because here Manohar is the buyer of refrigerator and Mr. Rajesh is the seller of the refrigerator. So totally here he is selling 10 units which cost 22,000 each and he is giving 15% discount and the rate of GST applicable is 18%. Okay. So now if the transaction is happening within the state, if both the buyer and the seller is within the state, which tax is applicable? In the last class while we were discussing, we discussed about that. Okay. If both the parties are within the state, which tax is applicable? Yes, CGST and SGST is applicable. So if both the parties, if both buyer and seller are in the same state, then CGST and SGST is applicable. If both the parties, buyer and seller, are in different states, okay, if buyer is in some state and if the seller is in other state, then IGST is applicable. So you should have to know this concept, then only you can compute the GST easily on a particular supply of goods or services. So now we solve the problem. So the format is very easy, particulars and amount. So cost of goods. So what is the cost of goods? What is the cost of refrigerator here? The refrigerator, yes, it is 22,000 each. So cost of refrigerator is 22,000 each. So how many units Mr. Rajesh is selling? He is selling 10 units. So what is the total cost? Now the total cost of goods, it is 2,20,000, right? 22,000 per refrigerator. For 10 refrigerator, it costs 2,20,000. Next, less discount. See, if discount is given, we will deduct the discount. If discount is not given, then we will not worry about the discount. So in this problem, discount is given by Mr. Rajesh. So what is the percentage of discount? It is 15%. So directly give 15% on 2,20,000 because on each refrigerator he is giving 15%. Even if you compute on each refrigerator or on the total value of all 10 refrigerator, you will get the same amount of 33,000. So 2,20,000 into 15%, you will get 33,000. You will get 33,000. So deduct the discount amount. Deduct the discount amount from 2,20,000. What is the balance you will get? The balance is rupees 1,87,000. The balance is 1,87,000, that is after discount. So now compute GST. Okay, so what is the GST rate here in the problem? It is 18%. So GST is at 18%, right? So now here the question is, which type of GST is applicable? Whether the CGST, SGST or IGST or UTGST. Here Mr. Rajesh is in Tamil Nadu and Mr. Manohar is in Mysuru. So he is in Tamil Nadu, Mysuru is in Karnataka. The transaction is happening between two states. So IGST is applicable. So IGST 1,87,000 into 18%. So how much you will get? 33,660. So add this value with 1,87,000. You will get the total value of 2,20,660. This is called the total value of supply. So this is how you are supposed to solve the basic problems under GST. Okay. Moving further, we will solve one more problem with that. So Mr. Akash of Mysuru. So here Mr. Akash is in Mysuru. Sold 10 units of drilling machines to Mr. Santosh at rupees 3,000 each and given discount of 10% and the rate of GST is 18%. Compute the GST payable by Mr. Manohar. So here Mr. Akash, where he is? Mr. Akash now is in Mysuru and here the buyer Mr. Santosh, where he is staying, that is not mentioned. If nothing is mentioned about the place of both the buyer and seller, just assume that the transaction is happening within the state. The transaction is happening within the state. So particular amount, so cost of goods. So 3,000 rupees is the cost of each drilling machine. How many units they are selling? They are selling 10 units. So totally you will get 30,000 less discount. What is the rate of discount they had given? It is 10%. Rate of discount is how much? 10%. Deduct the 10% of discount on 30,000. You will get 3,000. So balance after discount is 27,000. Okay. So now compute GST at 18%. So now here you are computing CGST and SGST. CGST 9% and SGST 9% because here the transaction is happening within the state. Why we are considering within the state? Here both the parties, the buyer and seller, place is not mentioned. The buyer and seller place is properly not mentioned. Only the seller place is mentioned, buyer place is not mentioned. At that point of time, you assume that the transaction is happening within the state and impose CGST and SGST. So 27,000 into 9% and 27,000 into 9%, you will get 2,430, 2,430, total GST of 4,860. And now the value of supply, the total value of supply is 31,860. And here the GST payable is 4,860. Next, moving further, problem number 3. Mr. X of Mysuru supplied goods for rupees 10,000 to Mr. Y of Bangalore. So here both the parties, Mr. X and Mr. Y, are in the same state. Mr. X is in Mysuru and Mr. Y is in Bangalore. So that means both the parties are relating to the same state. So now CGST and SGST rate on goods and services at 9% each. Find the following. So what we are supposed to follow? We are supposed to find out the total price charged by Mr. X for supply of goods and who is liable to pay GST. So here who is liable to pay GST, whether Mr. X or Mr. Y? Obviously Mr. Y, because Mr. Y is the buyer of the product and he is liable to pay GST. And the total amount of tax charged, or the total amount charged by Mr. X on Mr. Y purchase. So same format, particulars, amount, cost of goods. So what is the cost of goods? Your cost of goods is 10,000 and the discount is not mentioned here and we are not considering the discount here. Directly compute GST on cost of the goods. So add GST at 18%. Here both the parties are in Karnataka itself or in within the state. So CGST, SGST is applicable. Rate of GST is how much? 9% each. That is CGST 9%, SGST 9%. You'll get 900, 900. Total GST is 1,800. So 10,000 plus 1,800, 11,800. So here 10,000 plus 1,800, totally you will get 11,800 rupees. So the total amount charged by Mr. Y or Mr. X, the total amount charged by Mr. X is rupees 11,800 and Mr. Y is liable to pay the GST of rupees 1,800 rupees. How much the GST is supposed to pay? He is supposed to pay 1,800 rupees of GST on purchase of 10,000 rupees worth goods. So this is how you are supposed to solve the problem. Next, moving further, problem number 4. Mr. Arun of Hyderabad supplied goods for rupees 50,000 to Mr. Madan of Bangalore. IGST rate on goods and services is 18%. Find the following. So here both the parties are in different states. So Arun is in Hyderabad and Madan is in Bangalore. So here what is happening? Here both the parties are in the different states and IGST is applicable. So what you are supposed to find out? You are supposed to find out the total price charged by Mr. Arun and who is liable to pay GST. Okay. So now particulars, amount. So cost of goods. What is the cost of goods? Yes, it is rupees 50,000 and add GST. So what is the rate of GST? 18%, and here we are considering only the IGST of 18%. So 9,000. Total price charge is how much? 59,000 rupees. So here the value is rupees 50,000 and the rate of GST is 18%. If you compute 18%, you will get 9,000 and 9,000 is the total GST payable and the total value of supply is how much? It is rupees 59,000. So next problem, problem number 5. Mr. Krishna of Hubli supplied goods for rupees 70,000 to Mr. Arjun of Madikeri. So here Mr. Krishna is in Hubli and Mr. Arjun is in Madikeri. Both the parties are in same state. And Mr. Krishna bought goods for rupees 47,200. Krishna bought the goods for 47,200 inclusive of GST at 18% from Nakul. So here we have three parties. So who are those three parties? Mr. Krishna, and the second party is Mr. Arjun and Mr. Nakul. So this Krishna bought goods from Nakul. He bought goods from Nakul and then Krishna sold goods to Mr. Arjun. So here Krishna bought goods from Nakul and sold to Arjun. So for what price Krishna bought goods from Nakul? From Nakul he purchased the goods by paying 47,200. So here 47,200. Okay, he paid 47,200 and he sold the same goods to Mr. Arjun for rupees 70,000. So here Mr. Krishna of Hubli supplied goods for rupees 70,000 to Mr. Arjun of Madikeri. Krishna bought goods for rupees 47,200 inclusive of GST of 18% from Mr. Nakul of Mysuru. CGST and SGST rate on supply of goods is 9% each. Calculate the total price charged by Krishna and the net liability of GST. So it's very easy to solve the problem. Here we have three parties because at the time of purchasing the goods from Mr. Nakul, Krishna have already paid some GST amount. So that GST amount is supposed to be set off while he is selling the goods to Mr. Arjun. So we will solve how to set off the GST amount. So cost of the goods. So for what price Mr. Krishna is selling the goods to Arjun? For rupees 70,000. So add GST. Add GST on 70,000. That is 9% each, because both the parties are in the same state. 9% CGST, 9% SGST on 70,000. You will get 6,300, 6,300. Total GST of 12,600. And now the total value charged by Mr. Krishna to Mr. Arjun is 82,600. Okay, the total price charged by Mr. Krishna to Mr. Arjun is 82,600. So now, what is the GST amount payable? So here 12,600 rupees is the GST amount what we got. But at the time of purchasing the goods from Mr. Nakul, okay, at the time of purchasing the goods from Mr. Nakul, Mr. Krishna have already paid 18% of GST. Okay, so he already paid 18%. So this amount 47,200 is inclusive of 18% of GST. So okay, if amount is for 118%, what is the value for 18%? Obviously, you will get 7,200. That means the value of supply is 40,000 and the GST is 7,200. Okay, so here deduct that 7,200. Okay, deduct that 7,200. The balance is how much? 5,400. So now, what is the net GST payable? Net GST payable is 5,400. So this is how you are supposed to compute the net GST payable by setting off the GST already paid at the time of purchasing the product. Because here Mr. Krishna is not the consumer of the product. Okay, he is not consuming the product. He is like a middleman. He is purchasing it and he is selling it to someone else. Next, problem number 6. Mr. Mahesh of Hyderabad supplied goods for rupees 50,000 to Mr. Kiran of Bangalore. So here both the parties are in the different states. And Mr. Mahesh bought goods by paying 35,400 inclusive of 18% IGST from Raghu of Mysuru. So IGST rate on supply of goods is 18%. Calculate the total price charged by Krishna and the net liability of GST. So here again it's very easy. We have three parties, Mr. Mahesh. So Mr. Mahesh supplied goods to Mr. Kiran. Okay, so before supplying the goods to Mr. Kiran, he purchased the goods from Mr. Raghu. So Mahesh purchased the goods from Mr. Raghu and then he sold the goods to Mr. Kiran. So for what price he is selling the goods to Kiran? Mr. Mahesh is selling it for 50,000. Here both the parties are in different states. IGST is applicable. So compute IGST as 18% on 50,000. So 50,000 into 18%. How much you'll get? 9,000. So total value is 59,000. So the total value charged by Mr. Mahesh to Mr. Kiran is 59,000. So now, what is the net GST payable by Mr. Mahesh, or what is the net GST supposed to be remitted by Mr. Mahesh to the GST authority? So here 9,000 on 50,000. But at the time of purchasing the goods from Mr. Raghu, Mr. Mahesh is already paid some amount, right? On 35,000, he already paid 18%. So if 35,400 is for 118%, what is the value for 18%? If you calculate it, you will get 5,400. That means at the time of purchasing the goods from Mr. Raghu, Mr. Mahesh is already paid 5,400 rupees of tax. So now again he need not to pay this 5,400. He can deduct this from 9,000. He is supposed to pay the balance of 3,600 rupees. So this 3,600 is called net GST payable. So this is how you are supposed to solve the basic problems with respect to computation of GST. So with this, I'm going to wind up this session. I'll come up with few more new topics. Until then, thank you all. Have a nice day. Namaste.